Hey friends, I want to talk about a specific tactic that I have found that works really well for me in group conversations. I think I've alluded to this before, but I want to talk about it in a dedicated video. So for starters, I historically have not loved group conversations or group interactions. And there's, over the years, I've kind of reversed engineered what I do like and what I don't like. And there's a very particular set of circumstances where I am going to be inclined to like a group interaction. And that's good to know, because if those situations arise, then I'm going to steer towards them and probably really enjoy it, and often enjoy it even more than a one-on-one interaction, which is my bread and butter. I really love one-on-one interactions, just attuning to one person and being present with them and kind of doing the thing that's most enjoyable for both of us. But groups are just a different animal, and often it's not possible to have the exact set of specific circumstances that I like that make it likely that I will enjoy a group interaction. And so that's fine, but just to review, the things I tend to like are, I've said this in another video, but like when there's a really clear purpose that's actively resonant for me, that's held and facilitated by a specific leader, and that's actually holding their responsibility. And ideally it's with people that I already know and trust, or at least some of them know well. And yeah, that's the kind of situation where I'm going to end up liking a group interaction, just guaranteed. But that's a lot of conditions, and those may not arise. And so then the question for me is, what do I do when I'm in a group situation, but it's not that? Like, for example, if I'm just at a dinner with 4 or 5 people, or, on a long walk with 4 or 5 people or something like that, which is the opposite of a really well-held, purposeful container. It's sort of this emergent, chaotic, complex system where it's like, yeah, we're just 4 or 5 people having dinner now. That could be a really, really, really unpleasant experience for me, where, there are worse ones, obviously, but like, I don't tend to like that by default. Let me just say why before I talk about what I do. It took me a while to figure this out, but like the easy thing to do in that situation is for one person to talk a lot. And I don't know, if there's 4 or 5, 6, 7 people, probably half of those people, or 2/3 of them, are going to enjoy the default conversation, and then some minority of the people are not going to enjoy the conversation and feel disconnected from it, especially if it's over 4 or 5. The smaller it is, the more likely it is that it's going to be something that everybody enjoys. But if it's 5, 6, 7 or more people, probably some people are really going to enjoy the conversation and some people are not. And some people are going to talk a lot more than other people. And that's kind of the default for most chaotic group interactions like this. And one solution to that is for me to just be the person that talks a lot and make sure that it's about something that I like. But that doesn't feel great, because I know actually, like, yeah, that's kind of enjoyable for me. But one, I don't know, I'm kind of more interested in other people. Like, I make these videos to talk about what I think, but if I'm with other people, I want to know what they think, and I'm curious about their experience, and I want to ask them questions and so on. And also, I just kind of know in the background of my awareness that whatever I talk about, if I'm the person that does that, then there's going to be some people who enjoy it and some people who don't. So that is a move. I can just like kind of do the power move of like, all right, I'm going to dominate this conversation and be the one that talks a lot. But I don't love it. It feels suboptimal to me. It's not even that enjoyable. I don't know. It's like I already know what I think about the things. Like, there's nothing for me to learn or grow there. Whereas in a one-on-one conversation, I can learn and grow so much just by asking someone questions and attuning to them and following what's alive for both of us. That's so psychoactive a lot of times, if it's done well, if it's with the right person. Pretty reliably, honestly. I can pretty reliably have like generative and or psychoactive one-on-one conversations, provided someone has some like base level of curiosity or attunement, even just to themselves. That they're like a willing conversational partner, basically. Anyway, so one solution to this with group things would just be just to dominate. Another one, which is locally available, is just to like be passive and be observant and kind of listen. But that's not that great either, because it's like, well, they might be talking about something that I don't like or I'm not interested in. It might not feel alive to me, or it feels just like kind of okay. I don't know, and that happens a lot of times. People are talking about some political issue or some sports issue, or I don't know, some social drama I'm not interested in, or I don't know. It's like, if you want to talk about this, fine, but it's not that meaningful to me personally. It's not alive for me. I'm interested in other things. In that case, if I just decide to watch, it can be interesting for me to like observe the social dynamics of what's happening and kind of narrate it to myself, where I'm like, well, this person's talking a lot, and this person seems to be excited in their body. This person seems bored. This person seems sad. That kind of thing, narrate it in my experience. That can be interesting to kind of people watch. But that's like a solo move, and it's kind of defecting from the group interaction. And people have told me for years, like, hey, group interactions are just a different kind of animal, but there's also different possibilities there. And I don't know, I've been interested in kind of exploring that. And even though it's not my comfort zone or my natural place of enjoyment, learning how I can make the most out of group interactions. And so the question has been like, how do I enjoy these kinds of chaotic group interactions where it's like 4, 5, 6, 7 people out for dinner or a lunch or whatever, or out for a walk, where it's just kind of emergent and you maybe didn't even know you're going to be with this group of people, and there's not a clear purpose. Maybe there's some connections between the people, but it's not like, oh, we gathered to talk about this specific thing that we know is interesting. How do I find enjoyment and benefit for myself and for the group in that situation? And so there's a specific move that I found, which I'm finally getting around to talking about 7 minutes into this video, which is how to describe it. Basically, to invite the group to, there's a couple ways of doing this, but basically to ask a question of the group and have everyone answer. So I can ask a question and be like, let's have everyone answer this question. Or I can say, alternatively, if it's the right number of people, be like, hey, how about we all ask questions and everybody answers? So if there's 4 or 5 people, everyone asks one question and everyone answers each question. So say there's 4 people, that's 4 questions with 4 answers each, which is 16 answers. That takes time, and it creates a little bit of structure, but it's nice because, one, I can ask a question that I'm interested in for that group, and also I get to hear other people's questions. I get to receive their questions. For me, questions are such a love language. I love getting questions. And there's a certain amount of serendipity and randomness and spontaneity in what other people ask. That's like, oh, I wouldn't have asked that question of these other people or of myself, and I get to answer it. And it also, very importantly, structurally sort of ensures that everyone is going to get a chance to be curious and everyone is going to get a chance to share. And so it kind of balances the distribution of who's talking how much in a way that's a bit more equitable, which I guess I kind of value. I don't know. I don't really like if just one person talks a lot or just 2 people talk a lot in a group. Even if I'm one of those people, it's just like, this doesn't feel good. I want to hear from each person and hear what they have to say. And I also want to witness them in that and also receive their curiosity. And I guess that's something I kind of value. I don't like when some people are more active than others, when some people are more passive than others. And that is a very common tendency in group interactions, for it to be unevenly distributed in terms of who talks how much. And this is just a structural way to kind of rebalance things that make sure everybody gets to talk. Typically there'll be 1 or 2 people, maybe me, who are more shy, who are more reticent, who don't share as much. And this ensures that they will share. It ensures that the people who are inclined to talk a lot will not talk too much. And also, it's a little bit of structure, but this tends to create organically a much higher leverage or more interesting or alive conversation topic that actually meets the group where it is and activates the possibilities that are there, where people kind of find their way towards a conversation that's much more interesting to more of the people in the group, because everyone's putting forth signal and everyone's listening to everyone else. And it kind of creates an emergent we, where it's like, oh yeah, we are having this conversation and what do we want to talk about? So I love that. Typically, I know sometimes people aren't up for this. It is a bit of a bid to be like, hey, how about we all ask and answer questions? And it requires people to be curious and to come up with a question, which people can be resistant to doing. Also, sometimes a failure mode of this is that people just have honestly kind of boring questions. But sometimes that's useful to have just a very simple question to start. Like I did this recently with a group and it went really well. And someone's first question was like, what's your favorite color? And that was just it ended up being kind of a warm-up question that was like, got people going and talking about themselves. And then there were other questions that came later. So anyway, the ability to come up with interesting questions is not evenly distributed, but even ones that are kind of simple can be generative in that way, especially early on in this kind of a conversation where it's like, okay, we're just getting in the mood of answering questions and being curious about each other and all that. So anyway, I love doing this. It works pretty well if I'm in this situation where it's like, oh, it's not a specific intent with specific people that I already know really well. This move is it's a bid that I can make that has pretty good chances of people accepting the bid. People are like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'll try that. And then if they do it, odds are pretty good that it's going to be an interesting generative conversation where I learn something about other people and enjoy the conversation and get to be curious about what's said rather than kind of disconnected or bored or alone. I don't know, that's how I tend to feel if I don't work to make the situations that I want to have. It's like, it's so easy to fall into a situation where I just feel alone and disconnected from a group and kind of bored with what's being said and dissatisfied and unseen and like, I just want to leave. And that's no fun. I don't like feeling that way. I don't want to feel that way in a group, especially if the people are quite interesting and have things to say. It's just like it's so easy for groups to be suboptimal in my experience in terms of what's discussed and how people relate to conversation. People aren't that good at having group conversations, and that's okay. But I can make bids and take action to make it much more likely that I will enjoy the conversation. And I can do so in a way that respects other people's autonomy and their interest and their own curiosity, what they're interested in. And if people accept this bid, then they also get to ask questions about what they're curious about and participate in the conversation and lead in the conversation in that way. And often if there's a round of, say it's 4 or 5 people and everyone asks questions and everyone answers those questions, the conversations that come after that, after everything that's been said, once it sort of opens up into being free form again, are so alive and so generative and so much more resonant than they would have been otherwise, because so much novel information has been exchanged and put on the table where it's like, I don't know, I'm getting this image almost of like, if you just let a group go to its own devices, especially a group of like emergent people where they just happen to be having lunch or dinner together, they don't even know each other that well, or there's no clear organizing principle, the conversation is going to be kind of superficial by default. But with this little bit of structure that still adds for serendipity and spontaneity, so much more is surfaced that people have a much wider range of motion almost in terms of what's possible in the conversation. And that is going to be so much more generative and alive, not only for me, like, yes, this is a way for me to get my needs met and for me to enjoy myself, but I think also for the group. And that's kind of what I'm caring about, is like in a one-on-one conversation, I know how to virtually guarantee that that conversation is going to be not only meeting my needs, but the other person's needs and the group's need, the group of 2, the dyad. It's like, oh, this is a locally optimal thing for the 2 of us. It's harder to engineer that with a group, especially if there's no clear structure or organizing principle or clear facilitator. But this is a way, it's a bid with just a bit of structure that makes that possible to emerge or arise spontaneously from a kind of group intelligence where it's like, oh, I had no idea we were going to talk about this thing, but that actually was really alive for most of the people in the conversation in a way that, just defaulting to whatever they would have talked about wouldn't have been. So Anyway, I love doing this. It works pretty well. And I thought I would share it in case it's of interest to you. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on group conversation and what works for you to make sure you enjoy it. But this is something that's been working for me.